So we want to know what is the parameter of interest. To figure out what the parameter of interest is, you want to figure out what type of variables you have. So it says 11,000 physicians were randomly assigned to take 325 milligrams of aspirin every other day, and another were randomly assigned to take placebo. So we're dealing with aspirin or placebo, and that's going to be categorical. And then we looked at whether or not they had a heart attack or not, and that's also categorical. So if we have two different categorical variables, our parameter of interest is going to be the difference between the two. So it's going to be the difference in proportions of physicians who had a heart attack between those who had the aspirin and those who had the placebo. So the correct answer would be B. So 10 wants to know what is the null hypothesis. So the reason why we want to know the parameter of interest, it'll tell us what the null hypothesis is. So we're just going to assume that there is no difference between the two groups, that P1 is equal to P2, or the doctors on the aspirin is equal to the doctors on the placebo. So physicians are equally likely to have a heart attack whether or not they take aspirin. So the correct answer would be B. And then 11 wants us to write the hypotheses with the correct notation. So our null hypothesis is going to be the physicians who took the placebo, or the aspirin, minus the proportion of the doctors who took the placebo who had a heart attack. We're going to assume they're the same, so we're going to set them equal to 0. Or we could also write the proportion of physicians who had a heart attack taking aspirin is equal to the proportion of physicians who had a heart attack taking the placebo. Either one of the two would work. And then we want to know what our alternative hypothesis is going to be. So our alternative hypothesis, they want to determine whether or not physicians are less likely to have a heart attack. So that means we want the proportion of those who took the aspirin to be lower than the proportion of those who took the placebo. So we're looking at, and we find that physicians are less likely to have a heart attack when given aspirin. So this is what our alternative hypothesis wants. We want to determine, is taking aspirin beneficial? Does it lower the rate or risk of having a heart attack? And then 13 wants us to write the alternative hypothesis with the correct notation. So our alternative hypothesis, we always say it's going to disagree with the null in some way. So it's going to involve the same parameter, PA minus the proportion of the physicians who took the placebo. We're going to still use 0, and then we want to figure out if we want it to be less than, greater than, or not equal to. Well, if aspirin, if it reduces the rate of heart attacks, this proportion is going to be lower. So we're going to have not equal to. And again, alternatively, we just have the proportion of those who took aspirin be less than the proportion of those who took the placebo. Either one would work.